Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Sir Derek Walcott, in one of his famous poems, Saint Lucie, he wrote, "Moi c'est Jean Saint Lucie, c'est là moi sorti, is there that I born." In many ways, Mr. Speaker, these lines personify the character of this Labour Party administration. Nous c'est Jean Saint Lucie. Nous connaissons ça Jean Saint Lucie Bouisin, c'est là nous fait, et nous avons point que Jean Saint Lucie, Mr. Speaker. For me, these words embody the true essence of our campaign promise of putting you first. You see, the fact that we know that we are St. Lucians, Mr. Speaker, it takes us to a place of ownership of what is ours. It enables us to ensure that we sustain what is ours for generations to come, while we strike an acceptable balance to invite the rest of the world to participate and enjoy in what makes us authentically Lucian. That be in the form of investment, tourism, exports, among other things. We must ensure, Mr. Speaker, that as a people, we preserve our heritage and position ourselves and our people, Mr. Speaker, and I want to emphasize on the word our people, Mr. Speaker, to maximize the opportunities that this land, which is ours, has provided us. This, for me, Mr. Speaker, summarizes many aspects of this budget as presented by the Honorable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, in September 2020, I recall making this tough decision to enter the political landscape with the primary mindset and disposition to make a difference. As a young St. Lucian, I was troubled, Mr. Speaker, and remain troubled by the blatant and obvious bias and disadvantageous work of the former administration. The manner in which people, Mr. Speaker, of St. Lucia suffered at the hands of the former administration, it irked me. It pained me, Mr. Speaker, to see people suffering while others bask in what was prosperity with their brothers, with their family members, dominating the contracts of the multi-million-dollar road projects throughout the length and breadth of this beautiful St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, this practice was very prevalent in my constituency in particular. Mr. Speaker, scores of young men and women and families were deprived of a chance to get that promised ching-ching in their pockets. My conscience could not allow me to sit idle, Mr. Speaker, and allow this practice, which quickly became a habit, to permeate. As the old folks say, umete bobo ale maling. As a young police officer, I witnessed and experienced firsthand the challenges faced by that very fabric with the entrusted responsibility to serve and protect, Mr. Speaker. Just imagine living the comfort of your home to work in inhumane conditions. I speak about the mold-infested police stations with air quality issues. I speak about the quality of sleeping quarters, Mr. Speaker, the conditions of washrooms, and the inadequate supplies and equipment needed to serve and protect. All this, Mr. Speaker, while we daily need to face the criminals and scores of young men in the inner city areas and the outskirts. The risk that my colleagues and I endured, Mr. Speaker, could not allow me to just relax and accept this. And so, notwithstanding the many discouraging comments by persons who care about me and still remain very dear to me, I joined that race, understanding that the task was an ambitious one which in some way mimicked David and Goliath. For Goliath in that instance was Mikudnoth, which never once voted, Mr. Speaker, for any other party but the flambeau. However, Mr. Speaker, the people of Mikudnoth were fed up. They were tired of being disrespected. No longer were they willing to continuously be bribed and fooled. They couldn't stomach tolerating the blatant disrespect. I recall one constituent saying to me, his stomach turned at a meeting, Mr. Speaker, at the Monipo Combined School in 2019, when parents, without any sort of consultation, had to agree to the merger of these two community schools. Mr. Speaker, let's be fair. I think that the merger was a very good one. However, the way in which it was done, he recounted that legitimate concerns of the people were shoved, with the then rep saying to them, charity begins at home, Laskute Powell Bolawi. Yes, Mr. Speaker. These were some of the comments made to the people. Persons who today still suffer from the socio-economic damage this mal-managed merger caused. While it saves this government, Mr. Speaker, as I said, there should have been consultation. But, Mr. Speaker, the people spoke. They took the Powell Bolawi to the ballot boxes. The resounding vibrations, Mr. Speaker, where I am concerned, ought not to be taken for granted. And I've said it in this House before, that there is no such thing as a safe seat. And if you want to keep your seat, you need to work to keep your seat. My constituents have needs. Their needs must be met, Mr. Speaker. And as their representative and a humble servant, I understand that I must seek to champion their cause. Realizing that there are constituents who did not vote for me, Mr. Speaker, as promised, they too must benefit from this type of representation. Mr. Speaker, my very campaign slogan said it. Bismiku se sanu. Mr. Speaker, early in the race, I created teams. Each team had its respective mandate and task. But one team that I held in the highest regard was that which brought me to focus on the work of the community. One individual said to me, from one of the teams said to me, Jeremiah, there is a strategy in everything. It is not just a game plan, but it is the execution of the game plan. And this also is the philosophy of the St. Lucia Labour Party and that of the Prime Minister, Philippe J. Pierre. Mr. Speaker, alongside the campaign strategy, this team assisted me in focusing on the work plan and work program after the win. Towards this end, a constituency development plan was prepared, born out of scribblings of my little notebook, which took into consideration the various plights of people across the constituency. So, Mr. Speaker, I walked house to house, Monteka Igbamwe black the quotation nom sa ka electi notebook sa babwai. Mais ils savent quoi ka aller, Mr. Speaker. Il y a les kaya la porte sur la porte et qui coûte ces moun et puis ces moun dit ça y brisé. Ça y brisé. Et que là yo dit ça y brisé. Il met un plan pour ça bail ces moun ça y brisé. Mr. Speaker, in the final analysis, this plan proposes a framework and roadmap to realizing a significantly improved constituency. One that takes into consideration modern day reality, as well as transforming the trajectory of the people of Micoud North. Mr. Speaker, our plan features 4 core pillars. It's like a house. The first regards a sector development plan. Second is an economic development plan. Of course, physical infrastructure is also a main feature of that plan, Mr. Speaker, and constituency upkeep, maintenance, and beautification. Now, Mr. Speaker, I stand here today in this honorable house with a smile on my face and with a lot of excitement. And here's why. You say you know why. Here's why, Mr. Speaker. This budget, Mr. Speaker, in one way or the other takes into account all the 4 pillars and identified projects and initiatives which I mentioned. Mr. Speaker, permit me to go through this as I correlate the many initiatives identified within this budget with the intentions and needs of my constituency. In my deliberations, Mr. Speaker, I will seek to address some other areas dear to me for which provisions are also made in this budget. And they are national security, Mr. Speaker, and I will say a little bit on education. Let us start with national security, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, crime is everybody's business. No walls, no last name, and no amount of money could save us from the adverse effects of crime. It has to take an all-inclusive approach and a nation to understand and take responsibility for creating a safer environment for its people. Mr. Speaker, I will say that short line in Creole. Crime ces affaires tout le monde a cette liste, Mr. Speaker. Et puis pièce titre, pièce mise l'argent, pièce go kay, pas kay ça sauve from ces éléments crime. Et nous pour nous tout en cette liste, pour nous tout prendre responsabilité, pour nous ranger les affaires nous, pour nous ranger les affaires crime dans cette liste. In other words, Mr. Speaker, there is no panacea to dealing with crime here or in the wider region. This phenomena, my government understands all too well. And for this reason, Mr. Speaker, we have decided to utilize a multidimensional approach to dealing with crime. We will not say, Mr. Speaker, that Kenny can't, but I can, Mr. Speaker. Rather, Mr. Speaker, what we will do is we will encourage the citizenry of this country to play their role in the fight against crime, whilst we provide the various agencies with the required support to ensure efficiency in the conduct of their respective functions. We will ensure that they are adequately equipped, Mr. Speaker, to deal with the issues of crime and national security. Mr. Speaker, it is on this basis that we have found it necessary to ensure the construction of the Groseley Police Station. Mr. Speaker, I have lived a life of the ordinary policeman, and at times I had to endure some very harsh working conditions in an attempt to meet the expectations of the public. And I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, the public have very high expectations of the police. Like my colleagues, I often had to grapple with the undertaking of these functions, knowing that the salary could never be commensurate with the working conditions one would have to endure. Mr. Speaker, any HR professional will tell you about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. But how can the police be motivated, Mr. Speaker, when they are constantly subjected to public scorn? This, among many other issues, Mr. Speaker, has adversely affected the morale of the police. Mr. Speaker, growing up, I remember the Groseley Police Station was located on Dauphin Street, I think, not too far from the primary school. This building was deemed unfit, and then the police were moved to the Boy Scouts headquarters, where they are to date, Mr. Speaker. The member for Groseley, Mr. Speaker, with every given opportunity, he reminds us of the mammoth task that he has as parliamentary rep for Groseley, just because of the sheer size of the constituency. Mr. Speaker, the officers of the Groseley Police Station have an equal task to ensure that law and order is maintained throughout the length and breadth of this constituency. A new police station not only brings life to Groseley, Mr. Speaker, but will bring a level of stability and comfort to the police officers working there, while simultaneously enhancing citizen safety and security. The police of Groseley need a home, Mr. Speaker, a permanent base to provide comfort after a hectic assignment. Mr. Speaker, a building alone will not solve the crime, but it will create an environment where our police officers feel appreciated. And I believe it will lead to higher levels of productivity among the police officers attached to that particular station. We do understand the struggles, Mr. Speaker, that the police face on a day-to-day basis, and we have to applaud them for what they have been able to achieve with the little assistance that they received, especially, Mr. Speaker, under the reign of the former administration. Mr. Speaker, at a time when we saw record-breaking numbers of homicides, you would want to think that the police would have been a priority. At a time when COVID forced everyone to stay indoors and work from home, the situation demanded that the police had to be outside and ensure that law and order was maintained, Mr. Speaker. How were they repaid for their hard work and commitment to the cause? What did we see, Mr. Speaker? We saw the vote for police training removed, Mr. Speaker. We saw the demolition of custody suites, Mr. Speaker. We saw a $20,000 repair to the Vieux-Fort police station ignored, and now the cost has rocketed, Mr. Speaker. We saw an incomplete shell at La Toc for the drug unit. We saw what appeared to be political operatives, Mr. Speaker. These guys in police uniform, giving orders to arrest individuals clad in a certain color. It is clear, Mr. Speaker, that the last administration was more concerned with disrupting the operations of the police by allowing the seeds of political patronage and interference to permeate and grow under their watch. Mr. Speaker, the time has come when we can no longer allow a vehicle with over 500,000 miles to be used by the officers of the Central Police Station. And it is on this premise, Mr. Speaker, that this government has seen the need to provide the police with at least 70 new vehicles since assuming office, so that they can be better equipped, Mr. Speaker, to carry out their duty. Unlike the former administration, Mr. Speaker, this government will not destroy. We will build, Mr. Speaker. We will refurbish. We will refurbish the old Central Police Station, Mr. Speaker, so that the prisoners can be housed there and it can serve the purpose of custody suites. Mr. Speaker, as we sit here today, prisoners who were supposed to be housed at the custody suites, had it been functional, are now being transported and housed at Marshall Police Station, Ancillary Police Station, Babuno Police Station, Denry Police Station, and even at times, Mr. Speaker, in my own constituency, at the Miput Police Station. Mr. Speaker, this is unacceptable and this is unaffordable. The policy direction of this government will bring a cure to this, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this government is putting measures in place to help ease the strains which the police face daily. Measures like ensuring that the police will be able to undergo training this year, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we often hear they say practice makes perfect. Continual training improves skills, abilities, and confidence. The government through this year's budget is doing more for the police than was done under the last administration. And come to think of it, Mr. Speaker, anything that we did for the police would equate to more than what the last administration did. Because what I gather they did, Mr. Speaker, was destroyed. So anything we do now, Mr. Speaker, would be more than what the last administration did for the last 5 years. But the initiatives that this government has embarked on, Mr. Speaker, as it relates to matters pertaining to national security, proves that we take safety and security of our people seriously, Mr. Speaker. Labour has an established reputation of being the only government, Mr. Speaker, that focuses on the police. Under a Labour government, the automatic increase of salaries for, Mr. Speaker, under a Labour government, police officers experience a reclassification of grades, Mr. Speaker, which resulted in the automatic increase of salaries of police officers at every rank of the organization. My colleague from Beaufort South, Mr. Speaker, though he's not there, and I always admire him, he knows all too well what I speak about. His legacy of ensuring proper police stations across St. Lucia is well known, Mr. Speaker, and documented. This government, Mr. Speaker, has shown its clear intention once more to ensure the much-needed repairs to various other police stations on the island are not just a wish, Mr. Speaker, but can be brought to reality. Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of me to speak about the police and not say anything about our prison guards at the Borderley Correctional Facility. Although I know the member for Babuno would expound on that. But, Mr. Speaker, we also understand, and it is this government, Mr. Speaker, which ensured that as part of our policy, Mr. Speaker, assistance will be given to the Borderley Correctional Facility. We know the struggles that the people at Borderley face. Inmates, likewise, the workers there, Mr. Speaker. We saw what happened throughout COVID, Mr. Speaker. We saw the videos circulating. And, Mr. Speaker, it is a sad state of affairs. However, it is this government's intention to provide Borderley with the necessary support that they need, Mr. Speaker, to help alleviate the problem and to fix the problem that we have at the Borderley Correctional Facility. Mr. Speaker, we understand that the issues that I spoke about initially, Mr. Speaker, are to deal with the current, or is to deal with the current situation that we have with crime. But we understand long-term, Mr. Speaker, that it involves a lot more than just equipment and training for the police. In order for us to see or for us to reap any sort of success, Mr. Speaker, we need to start looking at long-term initiatives. And it is for this reason, Mr. Speaker, under the primary school, you would see that we have broadened the primary school education to address critical thinking, Mr. Speaker, conflict resolution, and emotional intelligence. We have to admit, Mr. Speaker, that we have dropped the ball over the years, that we have dropped the ball as it relates to our children and discipline, Mr. Speaker. We have dropped the ball as it relates to proper socialization of our children, Mr. Speaker. But we have an opportunity to fix this problem. And we are going to make the most of this opportunity, Mr. Speaker. And we are going to ensure that we create a safer and secure environment for all St. Lucians. Mr. Speaker, I will now deal with aspects of the appropriation that affects me in my constituency. Every week I ensure that I undertake a visit, Mr. Speaker, at least to one area within the constituency. As part of these visits and as parliamentary representative, I make it my duty, Mr. Speaker, to prioritize the areas that from my campaign were seemingly isolated. Mr. Speaker, with every visit, I end the day depressed and challenged in deciphering the plight of my constituents. One would think, Mr. Speaker, that a community, a village, a Tilaku, that for more than 4 decades has had a UWP representation in the House, should be in a better position. What exists, Mr. Speaker, for most part, is indescribable. It is heart-wrenching, Mr. Speaker. Never mind the last-minute cosmetics of roads in Monrepo and the Mikud village. And we see that the last-minute cosmetics, it does not work, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, the eyeshadow don't fool the people anymore. In Mikud North, we have wipes that take that away. They are suffering, Mr. Speaker. They require some form of economic sustenance in Mikud North. For most of them, the sectors and areas they rely upon for sustenance consist of deplorable infrastructure. Take, for example, fishing. Do you know that Mikud North, Mr. Speaker, particularly Mikud, is the 3rd largest landing port in St. Lucia? We have quite a few persons within this constituency, Mr. Speaker, whose livelihood and sustenance of their families depend on fishing. It is a sad reality, Mr. Speaker, to know that the former administration, with a sitting representative, failed to champion the cause of the Mikud North fishers. The Prale complex, though built before 2016 under the Labour Party administration, was not open during their reign. Ek bon day. And pas même parler about jetty Mikwa, Mr. Speaker. Ça là même c'est un chair, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, this one is very sad. And I get very emotional, Mr. Speaker, when I speak about this jetty. Mr. Speaker, imagine being promised a gift. The gift became your right to have, a must-have. When you finally get that gift, Mr. Speaker, it's your magie. And that's what I can describe it as, Mr. Speaker. It's your magie. The fishermen were fooled. Even I was fooled, Mr. Speaker. I don't know who did the due diligence, but it begs to question what would have happened, Mr. Speaker, if the fishermen kept this rep in power. What would have happened? Would it have been another insult, as charity begins as home? Or would they have been told, Saujou and Chibi? Or maybe that too, Mr. Speaker. We may have heard Ki Gain Ki Jet here. Seeing that was the modus operandi of the former administration, particularly the last representative of Mikud North. Thankfully, Mr. Speaker, the people's frustration fostered a difference. Thankfully, Mr. Speaker, they have taken a chance and did the right thing to entrust their confidence in this Philip JPL Labour Party administration. So here's what, Mr. Speaker. Under the identified provisions in this budget, we will commission the Prale Fishing Complex, and we will do all within our control to see that the fisher folks of Mikud is gifted with a proper jetty and a fishing complex. Throughout the constituency are several existing fishers and scores of young people, Mr. Speaker, who are showing interest in fishing. We need to ensure that we harness the interest and introduce new technology and techniques to ensure the sustenance of this profession. With new sensations, Mr. Speaker, like tea cuisine, and I say tea cuisine, and I don't want to look at the member from Grosile, Mr. Speaker, but with new sensations like tea cuisine and envisage add-ons that will come as a result of the community tourism program, the viability of fishers remains paramount and potent. Now, I know, Mr. Speaker, that my parliamentary colleagues who go up and down the East Coast, those even from the North who take a little drive down the East Coast every now and then, Mr. Speaker, they would be able to tell you, Mr. Speaker, when they pass Prale, you might hear them saying, what? Prale Santi? Ekville Mikopli Santi? You might hear these things, Mr. Speaker. And this, as we know, Mr. Speaker, is as a direct result of the sargassum problem that we have and which remains a perennial issue for us in Mikud North. Under varied climate change-related programs in this budget, Mr. Speaker, and initiatives prioritized in this budget, I have been given some assurance that some of these programs will be channeled to help alleviate these challenges. Equally, my office will work with the fisher folks and other interest groups to undertake several social programs to deal with the sargassum issue, be it on the CDP. So, Mr. Speaker, my colleague from Castries Southeast, as well as Dennery South, please answer my call when I knock on your door.
I always do.
Prale is literally along the major highway, where the visitors to our shores traverse on a daily basis. And we have seen a significant increase in the amount of tourists landing in St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. So this means now more than ever, we should address this situation. With the many amazing and untapped opportunities emanating from this village, I know you assist us in bringing some form, that you will assist us in bringing some form of resolution to this issue. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, traditionally the Mikudnov constituency is considered an agricultural district. The main economic activity since the early 1980s was aligned to agriculture and fishing. For the most part, the constituency formed part of the banana belt. At the time, the export crop was considered and often referred to as the green gold. We cannot find the green nor the gold these days, Mr. Speaker. And so, during this heightened production and trade era, farmers benefited from subsidized duty-free vehicles, and other special conditions, which in turn fueled the constructions of homes and related businesses. This growth and ability enable farmers to provide for their families and finance education for their children, even at the tertiary level, Mr. Speaker. Considering banana was the main economic activity, agricultural lands were made available in key areas, including Maho, Wayon, Piton, Pelouge, Miné. And to complement and simplify access to market, the government at the time heavily invested in feeder roads that allow farmers to ply their trade and diversify intercropping coconuts, copra, citrus, and other ground provisions and root crops, Mr. Speaker. This mainstay has dwindled, and we cannot run away from the fact, Mr. Speaker, that this mainstay has dwindled. And what were predominantly agricultural farms now remain abandoned. This is primarily a result of changing priorities of previous governments, as well as significantly deplorable and in some cases inaccessible conditions on the farm feeder routes. Mr. Speaker, I had the privilege to lead the delegation from the Ministry of Infrastructure alongside the member for Castries North, and he can tell you what he saw when I brought him up the Wayon Road, the Piton Road, the Point. He can tell you what he witnessed there, Mr. Speaker. The realities of this situation are further exacerbated by the loss of readily available markets and have forced farmers to abandon their trade, Mr. Speaker, especially when they were promised markets in France and other places, Mr. Speaker, and there were no actual markets. Mr. Speaker, additionally, it has been realized that a vast majority of these farms were once owned by farmers who are now either deceased, bedridden, or retired. In most instances, the descendants of these farmers did not continue their trades, further contributing to the fall of the agricultural sector, especially in Mikudnov. I feel comforted, Mr. Speaker, in knowing that this government has prioritized aspects of agriculture as part of this budget. We recognize that the industry is now at its prime, considering issues of food security on a global level, attributed to the realities of climate change, which remains the main focus of this government. This government, Mr. Speaker, through international agencies like FAO, Fair Trade, ICA, will place agriculture at the forefront and has developed programs and initiatives geared towards attracting youth in agriculture. The availability of farmlands, Mr. Speaker, within the Mikudnov constituency and the realities of high youth unemployment, particularly in males, as aforementioned, creates a perfect environment to piggyback on all the opportunities highlighted in the Prime Minister's budget address. Additionally, the emergence of the continuation of innovation in agriculture and value-added products create further opportunities for the constituency. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, there is an opportunity to leverage established cottage industries previously developed. And some of these cottage industries include the Rural Women Agro-Processing Project and the Mikud Chocolate Brand developed between 2011 and 2015. And the CMOS business, Mr. Speaker, the CMOS business, which is thriving in Prale. Mr. Speaker, when you speak CMOS, you think Prale. We have a history spanning over 4 decades, Mr. Speaker. You can ask Ms. Greta Joseph and other members of the Prale Simos Farmers Association. I'm happy to note that on page 43, Mr. Speaker, the plans to improve the Simos product and market. Under our community tourism initiative, we even seek, Mr. Speaker, to establish an authentic Simos experience, something that will mimic that of the chocolate project by Hotel Chocolat. So where you'll be able to experience, Mr. Speaker, a farm-to-table experience as it relates to Simos. Mr. Speaker, I now move to tourism, more specifically, community tourism. Yes, tourism in Mikud. Yes. Mr. Speaker, much has been said about the community tourism initiatives as proposed by this government. Let me tell you, I have never, Mr. Speaker, never appreciated tourism as I do now. Why? Because now I can taste the benefits of this for my constituency and my constituents. Currently, Mr. Speaker, Mikud North does not have an established tourist product and does not significantly benefit from the tourist dollar. The constituents do not benefit from any synergies brought about by industry. However, Mr. Speaker, the Mikud North constituency is pregnant with untapped touristic products. I have been fortunate, Mr. Speaker, to be one of the first parliamentarians who have sat down with the Honorable Minister and member for Castries South and to have a discussion with him, Mr. Speaker, about a constituency tourism product that comprises of tours, attractions, nature trails, beaches, bird watchings, ruins, archaeological artifacts, botanical gardens, and Mr. Speaker, all what I mentioned we do have in Mikud North, ATV trails, among others. These put together can form an interesting community tourism concept that the constituency can capitalize on given its geographic location and proximity to the international airport and the capital city. Under the tagline, Mr. Speaker, visit, explore, experience, the primary objective of community tourism in Mikud North will seek to significantly expand economic diversification, stimulate growth, and reduce poverty. Through the initiatives, projects, and activities, the program will also endeavor to establish a thriving environment for business growth, Mr. Speaker, and development. We will explore the existing touristic opportunities within the constituency and strengthen linkages among other key economic sectors, namely agriculture, aquaculture, youth, and sports development. Our community tourism project, Mr. Speaker, it will incorporate aspects of product development, beach upgrade, and I cannot wait to see the Prale beach get upgraded, Mr. Speaker, and capacity building for the local enterprise level, Mr. Speaker. It will aspire to create touristic business clusters and support networks, integrate technical vocational training elements, formulate and improve environment that will allow constituents to understand the value of tourism as a means of economic growth and development. We will seek, Mr. Speaker, to assist constituents who are interested in prescribed technical assistance, capacity building for the National Community Tourism Initiative. We plan to implement new collective approaches and strengthen traditional and cultural approaches to boost household income, finance micro businesses at family and community levels. Mr. Speaker, to maximize these opportunities, the constituency through this Mikud authentically ours brand will seek to expand and improve existing touristic products while introducing and developing new sites, tours, attractions, and accommodation at international standards to effectively capitalize on the available human, social, and natural resources that will incorporate the authentic and unique competitive advantages of the area. In so doing, Mr. Speaker, Mikud North will be better positioned to increase the value of its tourism product and create linkages with other sectors and industries. Furthermore, our community tourism program is envisaged to contribute to the growth and capacity of constituents, encouraging self-employment. The project is expected to be implemented at the local level, directly impacting those areas affected mainly by the decline in the economic activity, the fall of the banana industry, and poverty. It is further envisaged, Mr. Speaker, that the actions and initiatives will significantly diversify the tourism product and the local economy in Mikud North, while simultaneously addressing critical social problems, particularly unemployment and poverty. Mr. Speaker, from the moment I presented myself to serve and participate in the building and development of this beautiful island, I have received resentment. Early in the race, I came to the harsh realization that I would need to amass some sort of testicular fortitude, Mr. Speaker, to be able to persevere, manage, and endure in the task ahead. Many doubted that I would be standing here today, Mr. Speaker. Many doubted. As a young man representing the people of Mikudnov, who would have believed, Mr. Speaker, that today, that the representative from Mikudnov would be a candidate of the St. Lucia Labour Party. Mr. Speaker, some call me mad. Yo me dit, est-ce que je suis fou? Est-ce que je quitte le travail derrière pour entrer en politique et courir Mikudnov? Oui, est-ce que je ne pas connaître, Mr. Speaker? Yes. In certain instances, I was even ridiculed, Mr. Speaker. You see, Mr. Speaker, for decades, everyone in St. Lucia knows that Mikud was solely flambeau. Whilst this is true, or should I say, may have been the truth, the people, as mentioned before, they were fed up, Mr. Speaker. Their allegiance did not bear fruit. Like most of our coconut and copra trees, they were tired. And the nuts were now small with little water, Mr. Speaker. The need for change echoed across age demographics. Mr. Speaker, no plaster, no mask of infrastructure projects and upgrades, which, by the way, is an obligation of the people. Mr. Speaker, this is an obligation to the people. So, no mask or no infrastructure projects, Mr. Speaker, would appease. I can never forget the time following my unfortunate demise, Mr. Speaker, which led to the amputation of my right leg, traversing challenging walkways in acute, impoverished areas. I recall the many interactions and meetings with the fishers, elderly and marginalized, and the youth, Mr. Speaker, who felt hopeless. Mr. Speaker, I will admit that the task ahead is hard. It is hard. The responsibility entrusted in me for most part gives me sleepless nights. I continually engage to ensure that I do not deceive. I continually engage, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that I do not deceive or disappoint the people of Mikudnov. Today, I want to assure them that I will relentlessly, Mr. Speaker, appeal and advocate on their behalf, even if I have to hop my way to ensure that they are heard and they benefit from initiatives and programs of government they receive, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the matters affecting the youth, particularly those who reside between the Tumase River in the south and the Prale River in the north, remain of paramount importance to me. Every time I look at this honorable chamber, Mr. Speaker, I look at the floor of this chamber, I realize that I am the voice of the young people, Mr. Speaker. For I am the youngest parliamentarian holding a seat here. Now, I still feel that my colleague from Grozile, Mr. Speaker, who is young, but I have to tell him, sorry, the boat is going and leave him behind in a while. And I know that his youthful spirit will still enable him, Mr. Speaker, to implement game-changing programs for the youth nation, for the nation's youth, Mr. Speaker. And in Castries North, we still have a heavy roller, Mr. Speaker, with a youthful spirit. But on a more serious note, Mr. Speaker, I genuinely endeavor to change the landscape in Mikudnov that will ensure a sustainable future for our young people. So, Minister for Youth and Sports and the representative for Grozile, I will continually knock at your door to ensure some of the resources prioritized under your stewardship can be channeled to benefit the youth of Mikudnov. I know that many of my constituents feel a bit discouraged with early pronouncements regarding my ministerial office, Mr. Speaker. Some of them who supported me took to the media trying to create some form of discord, expressing their disappointment. Mr. Speaker, the past 9 months have been a learning opportunity for me. In some instances, I have been brought to accept some realities as it pertains to political landscape and even find one way within that space. In other situations, I have learned so much that no university, subject, or even lecture, Mr. Speaker, in political science would afford me. I have met people and interacted in settings that would allow me to champion the cause of my constituency, to further benefit Mikudnov. You see, Mr. Speaker, I trust the recommendation and counsel of the Prime Minister and colleagues with this decision. I know that as I progress in this political journey, with the help of God and direction as well as guidance of the honorable men and women of this House, Mr. Speaker, I will be even better equipped to serve. We need strong, committed, dedicated politicians, Mr. Speaker, who will create a difference in the political landscape of St. Lucia. We need politicians who understand that their call is to serve. Not to look down, Mr. Speaker, but to serve. Mr. Speaker, my mother, Marika Norbert, at the time of my birth, she named me Jeremiah. My whole life has been of service to my family. In my debut on this Mr. Speaker, on the program with Mondi, and Mr. Speaker, through you, let me wish her a happy birthday. I shared my story, which provided insight into my upbringing. This upbringing, Mr. Speaker, is characterized by humility and ensuring the 9 brothers and sisters who followed me were cared for. Even if it meant working alongside my uncle, Mr. Speaker, in the local coal pit at 11 to obtain some form of remuneration, to support my mom and to have some clean money for lunch. I am now getting to terms with the meaning of my name and calling. You see, Mr. Speaker, the Old Testament tells us, Mr. Speaker, that Jeremiah was a Judean prophet whose activity spanned for the utmost, Mr. Speaker, about 4 decades in his country's history. The book further tells us that the prophet Jeremiah appears to have received his call to be a prophet in the 13th year of the reign of king and continued his ministry until after the siege and capture of Jerusalem by the Babylonians. In essence, Mr. Speaker, Jeremiah was called to serve his people, to ensure they were well and that they did well. I desire, Mr. Speaker, to leave my namesake. I want to serve and I want to leave a legacy of service behind me. I want to inspire the youth to serve while I champion the cause of my people to assure their sustenance and livelihood. I want a prosperous Mikudnov, and I want to do so as a servant with the support of the many groups, individuals, and associations of Mikud. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I would like to now take this opportunity to express sincere and deepest gratitude to all those who have supported me in this journey. There are a few who would not want me to mention their name. They know who they are. Thanks to the constituency arm, who embraced me and continues to buy into the concept of inclusiveness. I would like to thank my parents and the entire community, Mr. Speaker, of Lapwet Mopo, where I was born. I would like to express profound gratitude to my campaign team, the campaign manager, my mentors, and my prayer group. I cannot forget, Mr. Speaker, the great work of the current Mikudnov Constituency Council and the workers of that council. Thanks to my fellow parliamentarians and my Labour Party family. Thanks to the employees of my constituency office and the clerk and staff of the Parliament office who have embraced me, Mr. Speaker. Above all, Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank God Almighty, who has kept me and who has given me the strength. Mr. Speaker, every day I bask in His presence because He has been so good to me. He sustains me, and I pray that He continues to guide us, Mr. Speaker. And when I say us, I'm referring to everybody in this Parliament, Mr. Speaker, especially this government, in delivering to the people of St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, I would again like to thank the wonderful men, women, and of course, the children of what is on the trajectory of becoming one of the most envied, Mr. Speaker, constituencies in St. Lucia, Mikudnov. Thank you for placing your trust and confidence in me and for allowing me the opportunity to be your voice and to articulate your sentiments and needs in this honorable house. I want to take this opportunity to remind and reassure them that I am fully committed to the task ahead. Permit me also in a very special way, Mr. Speaker, to recognize Deputy Commissioner of Police Dorian O'Brien, who proceeded on pre-retirement leave on Tuesday after dedicating more than half of his life towards serving and protecting this nation. I want to wish him well in his post-retirement life. In many ways, Mr. O'Brien was a mentor. And again, thank you for your tremendous contribution to the development of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force over the years. Mr. Speaker, we have a strong team of formidable men and women who have been entrusted by St. Lucians to manage their business. We did not win the elections by a raffle, Mr. Speaker. We won because the people placed their trust in the men and women who sit in this honorable house, Mr. Speaker. Yes. We did not win by going there either, Mr. Speaker. I am grateful to be affiliated with this team. I have had the privilege to sit in on many deliberations, Mr. Speaker, which led to the preparation of this budget. As a first time, or some would call you a rookie, Mr. Speaker, in the process, I have learned so much. I continue to understand the runnings of government and its correlation with political life in the context of serving and ensuring the best interests of the people of St. Lucia. With this said, Mr. Speaker, by my judgment, I am satisfied that proper due diligence was considered and factored into this budget. I am confident, Mr. Speaker, delivery and implementation of the many initiatives and programs espoused in this presentation will help in the transformation of St. Lucia, in empowering our people and the transformation of our economy. Therefore, I speak on behalf of the people of Micoud North, Mr. Speaker, and I fully endorse this budget as proposed by this government through this honorable minister. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.